Hello friends, I'm Oleksandr Palii, Ukrainian historian. Today I will tell you about Slavs, all about Slavs. My previous lecture on the history of Ukraine, see on my YouTube channel.
The Slavs were first mentioned under the name Veneti in the 1st century AD. Contemporaries described them as a large and militant people inclined to anarchy and self-rule. Roman historians wrote about their long raids on land and unions with the Sarmatians. Byzantine military commanders noted the Slavs' special skills in fighting in the woods, tracking enemies, capturing informers as prisoners, hiding in the water for hours, and breathing through blades of reed, etc. At present, most scholars believe that the homeland of the Slavs was in the northern Carpathians and Volhynia, as well as in Policia and the area on the right bank of the Dnipro. Purely Slavic names of rivers are concentrated in this part of modern Ukraine. Other parts of Ukraine frequently feature
Indo-Iranian, Scythian, and Sarmatian, and Turkic names for rivers. For example, the name of the Dnipro, Dniester, Danube, and the Donets come from the Sarmatian word for water. Since the 3rd century AD, Slavic groups were noted as living along the lower Dniester and near the Black Sea. The location of the first Slavic settlements in the forests of Volhynia and Policia protected them against numerous attacks, which were common in the steppe. At the same time, the Slavs learned the art of war through contacts with the steppe people in Greater Scythia, through unions with the Sarmatians, and by being part of the Hunnic Empire. In the first half of the 1st millennium AD, the Slavs split into the Antes and the Sclaveni. The Antean tribal union, 4th to 7th centuries AD, was made up of the Slavs and the Sarmatians, largely Roxolani, and inhabited the greater part of Ukraine, in particular all of right bank Ukraine between the Dnipro and the Dniester, including the northern coast of the Black Sea. The families of Antean princes included both Slavic and Sarmatian tribes. The Greeks called the Antes the most powerful of all Slavs and referred to their countless tribes. The Sclaveni lived between what is now Ljubljana and the Dniester and up to the Vistula River in the north. In the 1st centuries AD, the giant Serpent's Wall, defensive fortifications stretching across most of the steppe and forest steppe zone in Ukraine, were built. They were 2,000 kilometers in length, reaching over 15 meters in height. It is not known with certainty whether they were built against the Goths or the Huns. In the times of Kievan Rus, people no longer knew who built them and when. After the defeat of the Byzantine army near Adrianople in 551 AD, part of the Antes and the Sclaveni resettled to Byzantine lands. Contemporaries compared to this resettlement to a flood. The resettlement of the Slavs until the 580s led to the total Slavicization of the northern Balkans, the territories of Serbia, Croatia, Bulgaria, Slovenia, Macedonia, and Bosnia. Groups of Slavs dared to attack imperial fortresses with much larger garrisons. Since then, the Balkans have many names similar to Ukraine: Kiev, Malin, Sambir, etc. Slavic tribes settled even in the Peloponnesus in Greece, the heart of the Byzantine Empire, establishing separate autonomous principalities, Slavinia, in the lands of the empire. In the 7th century, the Slavs settled in the vicinity of Novgorod. In the 8th century, the first Slavs came to the territory of Belarus, intermixing with the local Baltic people. In the 9th and 10th centuries, the Slavic tribes of Vyatichi and Radomichi came from Poland to what is now Central Russia, populated by numerous Finno-Ugric peoples back then and intermixed with them. Meanwhile, in Ukraine, one of the Antean princes involved in a campaign in the region of the Danube River was Kii, a prince from the tribe of the Polans. The city of Kyiv, which he founded, was located on hills, which was convenient for defense. It stood at the crossroads of many trade routes between the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea, the Desna River, etc. According to the Rus Primary Chronicle, an ancient Ukrainian chronicle, the three Poland princes Kij, Szczec, and Korev initially founded, each his own fortress, on the Kievan hills and later formed one city under the leadership of the eldest brother. This occurred after the breakup of the Roman Empire into Eastern and Western, 395 AD, approximately in the late 5th or early 6th century AD. Kij founded the city of Kievets on the Danube. According to the ancient Ukrainian chronicle, written by Nestor the chronicler, Kij was a fairly important prince and met personally with the Byzantine emperor. The history of the three brothers and their founding of a city in the land of Palii, Scythia, was retold in Armenian sources in the 7th century AD. Kyiv still has the Starokivska, Szczekowitsia, and Korivitsia hills. The Vikings were amazed at the large number of fortresses in Ukraine and called it Gardariki, the realm of cities. In the 11th century, Kyiv was the second largest city in Europe, after only Constantinople. It had a population of between 50,000 to 150,000 people, according to various sources. The inhabitants of Russes had a somewhat higher standard of living than people in Western Europe, because at the time, wealth was largely determined by the fertility of land and convenient trade routes. All proper names associated with Kyiv that are found in ancient chronicles have distinctly Ukrainian sounds. Kyiv, Libid, Pecherska Lavra, Dovbychka, Uhorske Urochiście, etc. Thus, regarding the origin of the Ukrainian people. For several millennia, Indo-Iranian tribes settled in the steppe zone of Ukraine and Proto-Slavic tribes in the forest zone, interacting with the former in the forest-steppe zone. The Ukrainian people emerged primarily as a result of this union. Since the Slavs, the Scythians, and the Sarmatians were present almost across all of the territory of Ukraine, the Ukrainian people were rather homogeneous. It should be mentioned that neither the Slavs, until around 500 AD, nor the Scythians nor the Sarmatians were Ukrainians. They were only the direct ancestors of Ukrainians. Following Mikhailo Hrushevsky, the majority of Ukrainian historians date the actual origin of the Ukrainian people, with its main features, to the time of the Antiochian tribal union in the 4th until the 7th century AD. At the time, the Scythians and the Sarmatians began to dissolve among the Slavs, adopting the Slavic language and sharing their culture, linguistic traits, and ways of everyday living. So other foreign influences on Ukrainians, Turkic, Tatar, Polish, Russian, etc., were short-lived and took place at a time when the Ukrainian people had already been formed.